The Science Spectrum, Lubbock, Texas. It's a wonderful place to visit any time of the year. A feast for the senses. Light, color, sound, music, and motion, putting it all together. Even visual illusions that confuse us and play tricks with our brains. Join us in Chapter 5, won't you, as we explore how some senses develop in the fetus, and by the time the baby is born, they already have a running head start with perception. Welcome back to Child Psychology and Chapter 5, Perceptual and Motor Development. We're going to cover 3 modules, and these include basic sensory and perceptual processes, complex perceptual and attentional processes, and motor development. In the first module, we're going to take a look at how the basic senses come on board, including smell, taste, touch, hearing, and seeing. In the second module, we'll build on these senses and study how babies perceive and the value of attention. I'll also discuss ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And in the last module, Motor Development, we examine the complex process of how babies begin to walk, fine motor skills, and physical fitness. Let's go. Module 1, Basic Sensory and Perceptual Processes. How can we presume to know what's going on in a baby or an infant's brain? I mean, it's not like they can tell us what they're perceiving and attending, is it? It's a problem. But child psychologists have come up with some ingenious research strategies. And basically, this is how it works. I'm holding a green card and a red card in my hand. Actually, my students tell me this is closer to lime and this is more like pink. But this will work for our purposes. We present the green color to the baby, and they pay attention to it. We present it again in a couple more minutes, they pay attention to it. We do it a third time, they pay less attention. And we do this over 10 or 12 trials. The baby pays less and less attention to it. It's getting familiar, it's predictable. It's what we call habituation. Now we present a different color, red. Maybe the baby pays very little, if any, attention to this. If that happens, we can infer that they can't tell the difference between red and green at this point. Because if they could, their attention would have perked up. And they would have said, oh, novel stimulus. This is new and different. We better pay attention to it. This is how we know a lot about infant perception and how we study it. In this chapter, we're going to go over what we've learned using research strategies like this. Smell, taste, and touch are further evolved than sight and hearing at birth. Smell and taste, in particular, are very much interconnected. Did you know that a newborn can recognize mother's breast milk? He prefers sweet smells and sweet tastes and can already recognize the 4 basic tastes, including sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. In fact, he will nurse more from mother's breast milk if she recently drank vanilla flavoring. The newborn is also sensitive to touch and experiences pain. We discussed earlier in Chapter 3 how the fetus starts to hear at 7 or 8 months. The newborn generally recognizes their own name between 4 and 5 months. As you review this section in the book, remember, if the baby significantly lags behind developmental milestones in hearing, you should get him or her checked out by a hearing specialist. With early intervention, the outlook for fixing the problem increases. Why is it so important to get on top of potential hearing loss as soon as possible? Well, a baby has to be able to hear for normal speech and language development to proceed. And then after that, cognitive and social development fall in place. For you and I as adults, we're probably more likely to give up our hearing before our vision. And in my case, with all the beauty that I've seen in the world, I would hate to miss out on that. A baby with visual impairment, normal speech and language development follow. The more devastating loss is hearing. So this is just another example of how these domains in child development are all intertwined and connected together. Is it true that babies are blind at birth? Well, we know that they respond to light and can track moving objects. They can see roughly about 12 inches away. It takes about 3 or 4 months for color vision to come on board. But by their first birthday, vision is about as good as yours and mine. As we conclude Module 1, please keep in mind how the baby arrives in the world with sensation and perception abilities that help ensure survival. Here's some examples to illustrate what I mean. Their hearing is best for human voices. They can see about a foot away, and all this helps with feeding, attachment, and bonding. They are disgusted by bitter tastes, which would make them spit out poison. And they experience pain, which can help them keep out of harm's way. Module 2. Complex perceptual and attentional processes. Now that we've covered basic perception, let's put it all together for more complex processes, including attention. Different sensations combine to form a perception. Motion, pattern, and color are all cues. It appears the baby's brain begins to do this automatically, but it requires some early experiences to prompt it and help reach full potential. When an object moves away, it casts a smaller image on the retina. How do we know Daddy does not get smaller when he walks away? This is the issue of perceptual constancy, and babies master this by about 4 months of age. They know that the old man does not change size. It's still Daddy. When do babies perceive depth? Visual cliff studies are fascinating, and they indicate that depth perception comes on board on average around 7 months. Now, babies typically start crawling at that same age, and the vast majority will not cross the deep end even if Mommy beckons from the other side. We know then that they've perceived depth and are fearful. It'll take a while longer for the baby to understand and trust that supporting glass is underneath, making it safe to crawl over. Can you see the survival value of being able to perceive depth just when the baby starts to crawl, but does not perceive depth before then? How do we perceive depth? Well, we can use binocular cues or monocular cues. Here's how binocular cues work. When you look at something, both eyes are sending slightly different versions to the brain, and the brain, in a manner of speaking, superimposes the two, and you get depth and distance. Now, if you don't believe that, and we've all done this, hold up a finger like this. You're looking at it with binocular cues. Close one eye, then close the other eye, go back and forth. It looks like the finger is jumping back and forth and moving, doesn't it? But it's not. That shows you how you're getting a slightly different version from each eye. Can a person see with just one good eye? The answer is yes. You can perceive depth and distance. And these are monocular cues. Our book goes over several, including texture gradient, linear perspective, interposition, so on and so forth. Artists have used these cues for centuries to portray depth in two-dimensional images. Now let's move on to attention. You can't pay attention to everything. You have to choose what's most important at any given time. Attention is the process by which we select information to be processed further. Orienting and habituation responses to stimuli begin early in infancy, and they both have survival value. The orienting response directs you to pay attention to something that's potentially important, dangerous, or even life-threatening. Once you establish that the stimulus is not a threat and is unchanging, it would be a waste of energy to keep attending. So therefore, habituation frees you up to pay attention to new or other interesting stimuli. No doubt you've heard of ADHD, short for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. This disorder has features that can include inattention, where the child seems entirely unable to attend. Another common feature is hyperactivity, again, where there seems to be no off switch to keep still and to stop fidgeting in the classroom. And finally, impulsivity, when a child seems incapable of thinking before acting and engages in potentially dangerous behaviors, such as chasing a ball into a busy street with traffic. An important key to this diagnosis is that the child is unable to control himself rather than simply being defiant. And as if the above symptoms were not troublesome enough, the child typically falls behind academically and annoys their peers to the point where friends give up and withdraw. Cognitive and social impairment may very well follow. It has been thought that the cause of ADHD, one time or another, was too much TV, food allergies, sugar, or a dysfunctional home life. But research in all these areas is mixed and inconclusive. It's probably not any one of those. What is known for sure from twin and adoptive studies is that heredity plays a significant role. What is the best treatment for ADHD? This is controversial, and you hear a lot of this in the media. Medicines and psychosocial treatments are most common, and it depends on the symptomatic features and level of impairment, whether it's mild, moderate, or severe. Ritalin has been one of the most successful medicines for hyperactive and impulsive features. Ritalin is a stimulant. How could a stimulant possibly help a child who's hyperactive and already impulsive? Well, it does, and it seems to work by speeding up parts of the brain that normally inhibit and dampen these problematic behaviors. It's kind of like stepping on the brakes in your car. And when the medicine provides those effects, the child is able to calm down and better focus. Psychosocial treatments are very useful, on the other hand, with inattentive features. And we do training with children to help them think, plan, organize better, even to help them anticipate consequences to future behaviors and make better choices. When we do that, that in turn improves cognitive and social skills. Again, everything is piggybacked on each other. Module 3, Motor Development. I want you to please review the figure under locomotion on ages for achieving developmental milestones related to locomotion. And remember what I said back in chapter 1, that these kind of charts show what is average, but normal is so much more than that. There are several specific skills that have to be acquired before one can successfully walk. You have to develop strong legs and muscles to maintain posture and balance. And after a few months, visual cues and inner ear balance help with this. The stepping motion is present in most 6 or 7 month-olds before they start walking. You can see this on a treadmill if a baby is safely held. Perceptual skills have to be developed so the infant can judge if a surface is suitable or not for walking. These and other component skills are individually mastered and integrated into the proper sequence for walking alone, on average, around 12 months. Walking upright is what freed you and me to use our hands, 4 fingers, and an opposable thumb. This moves us into the area of fine motor skills, the ability to use our hands, fingers, and wrists to manipulate objects. Here's a question. Are you right-handed or are you left-handed? I bet your mother would probably report that you showed a preference around 1 year of age, and that it was well established by kindergarten. But why do we have a preference? As with so many other things in child development, this seems to be an interaction between heredity and environment. Identical twins are more similar than fraternal twins on handedness. In the past 50 years, we have seen an increase in the number of lefties, and estimates range from 8, 9, 10%. This is due to environmental factors. What I mean by that is that in the old days, it was not uncommon for teachers or parents to convert a child who was naturally left-handed into somebody who is right-handed. The number of righties is decreasing, and it suggests it was overinflated because of environmental pressures to make everybody right-handed. And finally, physical fitness. Unfortunately, our country is in poor shape. National fitness levels for children and adolescents are shockingly low. Less than half meet government standards on all tasks for fitness. And of course, this is consistent with the obesity and diabetes type 2 epidemic that I talked about earlier in the course. Why are things in such a sad state? That is debatable. Today, more youth get their exercise through organized team sports than ever before. But whether a child will continue exercise and athletic activity depends a lot on the coaching they receive. Children benefit from a coaching style that teaches competence and mastery, social skills, teamwork, initiative, and goal setting. But children are more likely to burn out and quit if the coaching style is too controlling, doesn't foster leadership skills, and emphasizes the work aspect instead of the joy of physical movement. That's all for now. Next time we cover Chapter 6, Theories of Cognitive Development, and discuss who is arguably called the father of child psychology, Jean Piaget.